Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. So you've waited for this since last week. Here he is, Dr. Steve Albrecht. It's crime time.
Thanks, producer Matt. Welcome to Crime Time. This is Crime Time episode 50. I'm Dr. Steve Albrecht. I'm joining you from the Acts Media Group studios in Springfield, Missouri. This hour, we'll be talking about road rage. It is a complex subject. It is a deadly subject, and it's also fixable if you're the one that has the issue. We'll talk about making sure you're not a victim of road rage, but also if you have road rage tendencies, what you can do. And it's beyond just going to a therapist. So thanks for listening to Crime Time. We'll talk about crime and crooks and cops and personal security. We'll talk about some dangerous people and lots of heroes. We'll even mention a few stupid crooks out there. And most importantly, we'll talk about what you can do to keep yourself safe and your family safe from crime and violence. And as always, you need to keep yourself and vigilant at home, at work, and in your neighborhood, and in your community, and in your schools, at work, and even on the road, as we'll talk about with road rage today. This show exists to make you feel more empowered, more secure, and more educated on security issues and the criminal justice system. As background, I worked for the San Diego Police Department for 15 years as a patrol officer, a reserve sergeant, and a domestic violence investigator. I now work as a training consultant and teach training workshops focusing on human resource issues, on employee coaching, workplace violence prevention, which is my primary subject area, and security issues at work. I've written 23 books on business and workplace violence and police subjects and on guns. You can find all the books on Amazon. My 3 gun books are available on Amazon Kindle. Albrecht on Guns, Volume 1, Albrecht and Farrow, Mike Farrow, my partner, Volume 2, and Albrecht on Guns, Volume 3 on Kindle. You can also reach me at my Crime Time website, crimetimeradio.com. Send me an email. We can talk about topics you want me to cover. In the email, just send me that with any comments about topics. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's Albrecht, A-L-B-R-E-C-H-T, Dr. Steve Albrecht on Twitter. And you can find past episodes of the show on SoundCloud.com, and also new ones on YouTube every week at this time. So there are 10 factors that create road rage, 10 factors that are connected to it. We'll talk about each one of those. And maybe some of them are kind of obvious to you, like anger, but maybe some others are not so much, which is a rationalization of behavior, and also that the idea that sometimes there are consequences for that behavior as well. So we'll talk about road rage as we go forward and give you some tips to make sure that you're safe from road ragers. And if you've got the road rage issue, which some people do, male and female, it goes both ways. It's not just a guy issue, it's men and women that have it. What we can do to help you not get in trouble, not get arrested, not end up in the hospital, as happens sometimes in road rage situations. So one of the first blogs I ever wrote, and I write a blog for Psychology Today for about 11 years or so. I go to psychologytoday.com for it. It was back in January 2013 on road rage, and it has become one of the most popular subjects of the 110 or so, 115 blogs that I've written for them. In all the ones that I posted, it's the most popular. And also, it is a part of an attraction to the U.S. and national media and international media for the subject of road rage, where there was an incident in some community, and they call up and say, can you talk about this issue on the radio and on TV, and even on Skype. So I've done a number of, in the last 7 years, I've done a number of interviews in national and international media where not a month goes by, every couple of weeks or so, every month or so, I get a call from somebody, an email or a call from a radio or TV producer or a newspaper reporter here and abroad that wants to talk about what the new phenomenon of road rage. And, we've had cars for over 100 years. It's not a new phenomenon by any stretch of the imagination. To name a few, I've given interviews to TV and radio stations in Singapore, Sydney, Australia, Seoul, Korea, South Africa. I've talked about it on stations and newspapers in Salt Lake City, Tampa, Pittsburgh, Houston. Houston is one of the more prevalent cities for road rage, apparently. Portland, Oregon, no surprise there. Detroit, New York, Canada, Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa for the Canadian Broadcasting Company. I've been interviewed on these same subjects all the time, and the media always starts with the same discussion, which is here's a horrible story of somebody who got involved in a road rage situation and in that particular city or that country, and then ended either with serious injuries or deaths. Of course, always the death of the person that was the non-aggressive participant. The person that was the aggressor was the one who did the harm with a gun, a knife, a ball bat, or a car. These situations have led to arrests, police chase, vehicle damage, and typically public outrage. But the public outrage is always pretty short. What does it go to after the event happens? We switch over to some other violent crime, some other issue. It's sort of like school shootings. It's like workplace violence. There's a national discussion for about a week afterwards, and then we switch to another topic. So the sudden media interest is usually episodic. It only goes around for when the event happens. And the first question I always get from the news people is, and the media people, is always, why? Why do these things happen? Well, there's lots of answers that you can guess. The human brain is complex, and the human brain under stress is complex. And the idea that the human brain in an emotional situation is protective of itself even when it's doing things wrong. So there's some testosterone poisoning, some estrogen poisoning, some hormonal issues there for people. They have what's called the amygdala hijack. The amygdala is the portion of the brain that controls reason and judgment, and we talk about in sort of non-scientific terms the little brain versus the big brain. The little brain is the lizard brain, that part of the brain which is primitive. It's basically sex, food, water, sleep. That part of the brain is very primitive and interferes with the reasoning of the big brain. The big brain is the one that has judgment and thinks about things and looks at consequences. The little brain does not. Lots of people in jail and in prison have little brain thinking to blame for why they're where they are. The idea that they had some decision to make and it was a horrible one, and they could have had a million other decisions if they had let the big brain kick in. The problem with the little brain thinking, or the amygdala hijack, is that it's so instantaneous that people sometimes do rash things, horrible, violent things that they would deeply regret later on, but they don't have that kind of insight or wisdom at the beginning. That's why one solution to road rage is to simply let something go in terms of the passage of time. Your brain is so fast. Your brain operates so quickly. You can make decisions in a split second, but if you just let a few seconds go before you decide what to do, it makes a huge difference in your reaction time. Anger is an uncontrolled emotion for a lot of people, and also it is connected to this desire to be right at an emotional level instead of just saying, let me think this through. People don't often do that. They stand in front of a judge or at a hospital, laying in a hospital bed, and wish they hadn't done it. So lots of factors going on in the human mind when it comes to road rage. There's no sort of perfect solution for it. This idea that we don't have this as a national discussion only when something serious happens always pains me. We typically make decisions about safety and security after a number of events, and we have lots of laws and things on the books, but there's not a lot of laws about road rage. I mean, you can look at the typical vehicle code for a state, and it'll say something like exhibition of speed, or exhibiting trying to make a speed contest, racing somebody. Those are code violations in the vehicle code. But the idea of road rage as a sort of topic, it's usually connected to assaulting somebody with a vehicle, or assaulting somebody with your fist, or assaulting somebody with a weapon outside the vehicle, things like that. But road rage is kind of difficult to define as a vehicle code or a penal code subject, and so we have sort of loose kind of affiliation around it. There's no road rage czar in the United States, somebody that pays attention to this stuff at the Department of Transportation. Now, insurance companies, they certainly pay attention to it, and we'll talk about a study that was done by the Auto Club to talk about road rage statistics a little bit and give you a sense of what that's all about. So when you look at this idea of who does it affect, you can say, well, besides the families of the people that are injured or killed, in the criminal justice system, we also have the National Highway Safety Administration, the National Transportation Safety Board, state governors, attorney generals, even the auto clubs, the National Auto Club, AAA, and the local auto clubs have studied this stuff and looked at it and come up with some statistics or reports. But mainly their response to it is really about getting people to protect themselves, and also maybe a little smaller about what you need to do if you have the road rage, problem in your life. And there's no real sort of discussion about it as to say let's stop doing this as a society. Let's not get involved in this type of response as a society on the highway, on the road. You look at stuff that happens on the freeway, happens on the roads, it happens in neighborhoods where these things are just out of control, and then the police end up responding when there's an injury or a death. What's the cut line? We're not going to do this stuff anymore in our society. It's hard to know how far we have to go before we stop. So the Auto Club, speaking of the Auto Club, has a statistics from a 2016 report about road rage. The AAA Foundation of Traffic Safety talked about a number of things here. There's a lot of bullet points to cover here. Car crashes are the leading cause of death in the United States that's not related to disease. Car crashes, number one thing. So when we think about the people on the highways that are killed, it's something like 36,000 a year, 33,000 a year people are killed. And parenthetically, think how many people are killed in accidents on the highway where they're not wearing their seatbelt and they're ejected. And that's typically how they die. They're ejected into the window or ejected out of the car, and they typically die that way when they're not wearing a seatbelt, which I find just unusual from the standpoint of, natural human condition is you hop in the car, you put on the seatbelt. Otherwise, if you don't, in my car and probably yours as well, the bell rings incessantly, the dashboard lights flash, and you can't go 20 feet without the thing reminding you that your seatbelt's not on. So I'm always puzzled by this. Is it people in the back? Is it people that buckle their seatbelt behind themselves and sit on it? Why would you drive a car without a seatbelt in the year of 2020? Nearly two of three of every driver who is believed to be aggressively driving is a bigger problem than 3 years ago, and 9 out of 10 drivers believe that road rage is a threat to their personal safety. It should be 10 out of 10. Almost 80% of drivers have engaged in at least one aggressive driving behavior within the past year, like purposely tailgating somebody or yelling at another driver or honking their horn at somebody to show annoyance or anger. I'm guessing also 1/3 had made an angry gesture at another driver. That's usually the finger flip. We know that one's pretty common. 1 in 4 people in this study of about 2,700 licensed drivers in the United States said they had, quote, purposely tried to block another driver from changing lanes or merging, which is, just a way to push people's buttons when it comes to the getting onto the freeway or changing lanes or getting over where you need to go, either direction, left or right. 12% said they had, quote, cut off another vehicle on purpose. 3% said they had bumped or rammed another vehicle on purpose. Actually caused an accident, which, when you think about how dangerous that is, can you control how hard you hit another car? You cannot. Can you control the fact that there may be kids inside that car, or elderly people, or folks that are injured or disabled already, pregnant women, for example, in that car? Will you bump aggressively or, quote, ram it into? Male drivers more likely to report these behaviors than female drivers. Both sexes drive aggressively. You've certainly seen it, and it's mostly a male issue because male violence in this country is a male issue. It's men kill themselves and kill each other and fight, as we have done since the cave days. But women do these things on the road as well because they're anonymous, and I'll talk about that. Drivers may underreport engaging in aggressive driving behavior due to their negative social connotation. Nobody wants the label of being a road rager, but think about this from the standpoint of your kids in the car, seeing you drive that way, seeing you flip people off, seeing you scream at other drivers, seeing you drive aggressively. What message does it send to your kids, especially your young kids? It says dad's a maniac. It says mom can't control herself. Mom and dad have anger issues, and it's frightening to them. And then they don't want to be at risk in those situations any more than anybody else does. But it's a bad look for your kids to see you engage in those kind of behaviors with them in the car, and it's not the right thing for you to do with them outside the car. When you look at this Auto Club study, also says, these numbers seem sort of low for the people that had the courage to confess. Aren't there a collection of folks who have a road rage issue, which never talk about it and would swear that they don't engage in those types of behaviors. Well, how would you get punished for road rage? You get arrested, you get speeding tickets, you get tailgating tickets, you get unsafe lane change tickets, things like that. Certainly affects your insurance. So you think the insurance companies would care about this issue, since they have to pay the damage and injury claims and pay these plaintiffs' lawyers that we see on TV that will represent people that have been victims of road rage. So do we need some sort of national campaign like we had for baby car seats or seatbelts back in the 70s, or Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that type of national campaign? Doesn't seem likely that's going to happen until we have these types of incidents happening over and over and over again, where someone dies and it becomes a national discussion. Do we see more or any kind of test questions added to test taking situations at DMV offices for new drivers about road rage? I don't see a lot of questions related to road rage. Do we have driving schools in this country that teach the dangers of road rage and what it means to engage in these behaviors, and also how to safely get your way out of those things? I'm not sure that's being taught in driving school for new drivers, 15 and a half, 16-year-old kids in classroom lectures or behind the wheel with a driving instructor. But how about the American Medical Association? How about the American Academy of Emergency Physicians? How about the National Association of Emergency Room Physicians? Don't doctors and other healthcare professionals have a discussion point to say that we're tired of seeing people come in on ambulance gurneys that have been in road rage situations, they've been injured or killed? So let's look at the roll through as to why some of these things happen, and think about if you have been involved in a road rage situation as either a participant, unfortunately, or as a victim, whether you saw some of these same types of things, and whether these 10 factors I'm going to talk about actually kind of make sense to you when you consider the issue. So the first of the 10 factors for road rage is that there is somebody who is the primary aggressor. You're not the primary aggressor. The other person is the one who is aggressively coming at you with a car, cutting you off, tailgating, speeding next to you, honking horn, swerving in and out, flipping you off, that type of thing. They are the primary aggressor. And that's kind of a primitive thought process, a hormonal thought process, where they're, again, overwhelmed by the little brain thinking, the amygdala hijack, and they're the primary aggressor. Second is the just concept of aggression. It's using your car as a weapon. It's cutting somebody off so that they swerve and crash, or cutting somebody off so that they swerve and hit another car, or cutting somebody off so they almost get in a crash. You're using your car as a weapon in an aggressive way, tailgating to the point where you're inches away from somebody else's bumper, using your car in an aggressive way to force people off the road, to force them to miss a turn or force them into a ditch, something like that. You're using your car as a weapon. Third, and kind of related to that, is the concept of territoriality, which is, this is my road, this is my car, and I do own the whole road. And so you see people being territorial about their lane space. So they're territorial about the lane that they're in. They're territorial about you coming into their lane. They're territorial about you coming over to merge. There's a sense of, I do own the road. This territoriality is the space around my car is mine and not yours. So this idea we've always tried to think about of sharing the road is not happening with these folks. The fourth factor is anonymity. So we have people with tinted windows in their cars and trucks. We have people that you don't recognize. You can't write down their license plate. There's no identifying stickers or anything on their car to help the cops identify them. So they feel they're anonymous. They can do what they want, threaten you, threaten to fight you inside the car, get out of the car and fight you on the side of the road, which is a horrible idea. Never pull over and confront these people. Never get out of the car and fight them. I mean, it's just a horrible idea. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the other reality is connected to sort of the space around them, and they don't care about who crashes or who is impacted by them with the way that they drive their car in an aggressive way. So they block when you try to change lanes. They don't let you over to merge. They force you off the road. That's that kind of territoriality. And then the anonymity part is connected to, I can do what I want. You won't know who I am. I'm anonymous to this situation. I can drive off and you're not going to be able to find out who I am. The other factor is engaging behavior versus avoiding behavior. You and I, to prevent road rage, would take our foot off the gas and let this person drive on past. You and I would change lanes and go to the next off-ramp and get off the freeway to avoid this person. these folks engage in these behaviors where they cross 6 lanes of the highway to come across to the off ramp and try to chase you down to the off ramp at the bottom of the hill. They actually engage in behaviors that put you at risk, put them at risk, and they have every opportunity to slow down, every opportunity to drive more carefully, and they do not. This engaging versus avoiding behavior. A big factor is their lack of insight about their actions. They justify their behavior. They say, so what? I'm entitled to do it. You should have not been in my way. You should have moved out of the way. You don't have the right to be in that lane. Those types of things. So there's a lack of insight, even to the point where they get out and fight people on the side of the road. There's a lack of insight when they get involved in shooting situations or fights with knives, things like that. They take a ball bat to somebody's windshield. I remember Jack Nicholson did that with a golf club in Los Angeles a few 30 years ago. And you think about, where do they have insight? Well, they may have insight in the jail cell. They may have insight standing in front of the judge for sentencing day. They may have insight as to what they did when they're in a hospital bed and they have injuries as a result of what happened. But even then, sometimes people don't, and there's a sense that they could do what they want, and it's not about them; it's about the other person. They started it, and there's this kind of sense they don't take ownership and have no insight and don't take ownership for what they did. Related to that is the rationalization of behavior. You caused the problem, not me. I have the right to do this. I was just, quote, protecting myself. We hear these rationalizations of their behavior all the time, and it's a sense of how they distance themselves from their aggressive acts, their violent acts, and again, they have no insight, and still they're standing in front of the judge waiting to be sentenced to jail. And then this idea of uncontrolled anger and aggression. It's primitive, it's hormonal. They can't help themselves. They scream, their face gets red, they lose complete control. And if you were to interview them, they would say, I don't remember what happened. I don't remember why I did what I did. I wish I hadn't done it. Sometimes they say that, sometimes they don't. But there's a sense of they cannot control their anger. Anger is a primitive emotion. It's also a secondary emotion. I've done some employee coaching on these issues with employees that had anger issues, and there's always a backstory, something that's connected to behind the scenes as to why they did what they did. It's not just about the anger for that particular confrontation or situation. Something else is going on with this person's life. So untreated anger, as we know, is a health risk. It triggers our stress hormones. It triggers our stress response. It's really tough on your heart rate. People that are furiously angry all the time suffer from heart disease and heart attacks. Folks that are furiously angry all the time impact their jobs, relationships, kids, marriages, friendships. I mean, it just goes on and on in terms of their inability to control their anger. And then this aggression that's connected to it. It's one thing to be angry. It's another thing to use your car as a weapon. It's another thing to get out of your car and go fight somebody on the side of the road. So primary aggressor, aggression, territoriality, anonymity, engaging behavior, lack of insight, rationalizing the behavior, uncontrolled anger, uncontrolled aggression, all parts of this issue. Two more. One, no concern for consequences of their behavior. So at the moment in time, they go, geez, if I keep doing this, I could get arrested. They don't think that way. If I keep doing this, I could lose my driver's license because of the points that I come up with when I get 16 tickets related to this issue. There's no consequences for them because they don't think about the consequences again until it's too late. So this is sort of connected to like a substance abuse kind of an issue, and I would say that anger is also an addictive type of thing, that some people have a real addiction to anger, because we define addiction as something that has consequences, and anger has consequences. Unmanaged, unmet, untreated anger has consequences. It ruins people's lives, friendships, relationships. It affects your freedom. Lots of things happen when anger goes unmanaged. And lastly, when you think about road rage as a subject, it is narcissistic. And all roads lead to narcissism, as my favorite podcaster, Adam Carolla, always says. Road rage as a concept is narcissistic. Dig me, look at my car, look at how I can make you feel fearful, I can control you, I can terrify you, I can terrify your kids. If I'm driving in such a way as to put you at risk with my car, using it as a weapon, that's narcissistic. So you look at those 10 factors, there's a lot of stuff going on in road rage that we can only sort of scratch the surface on, because it is a deep, sometimes primitive human emotion. And let's talk about what we need to do to make sure that you're not involved in those types of situations in road rage, especially on the side of the road, especially as you're kind of scanning the highway, as you're driving around, seeing what you see, surface streets, on the highway, that type of thing. First off, if you look at yourself and you say, if I'm being honest, do I have a road rage issue? Say that 3 times fast. Road rage is all about uncontrolled anger. And so if you say, I have anger in a lot of portions of my life, do I have anger about how I drive and how other people impact me? I guess when I was younger, I was super frustrated with a lot of people when they're driving. I've never flipped anybody off in my car. I've never rolled down the window and shook my fist at anybody. But I've given them a look, and I've given them a gesture like, "What'd you just do that for?" But as I got older and I've become sort of more patient with people's foibles and their problems, I tend to care less about road rage unless it's directly affecting the safety of me or my family. But I think sometimes you have to have a little bit of distance to this subject and go, it's not my intention to engage with this person and put my life at risk or have them harm me or harm my family. Just let them go. And so the good news about a lot of these people is that they fly on down the road and they're not a part of your life anymore. So if we look at anger, one of the things you have to say to yourself is, am I an angry person in general? And if that's true, then road rage is one of your many problems connected to anger instead of it's a rare thing that happens where people get frustrated or angry at each other on an occasional basis. Folks that have road rage have demonstrable anger and lots of issues in their family and in their lives, at work and in their relationships, etc. That being said, if you can say to yourself, I think I have an anger problem, must get some help. That could be therapy, that could be a pastoral counseling, that could be using your EAP or Employee Assistance Program of counseling services at your work. There is a concept in therapy called anger management, and I do anger management programs, but I actually call them anger mastery programs because I think management means you sort of suppress your anger, and you sort of tamp it down, you stuff it into the box, or sometimes literally into the cannon, which becomes a thing that launches. Or I use the phrase anger mastery, which says that we get some control over anger, that we have some insight about anger, that we have tips and ideas and tools that we can actually apply towards mastering anger as opposed to anger management. So this idea of road rage, you have to look at yourself and say, do I have an anger problem? And if so, what are my choices? What consequences have I felt or faced so far? And as an issue, what do I need to address in myself? And that's going to typically involve some sort of therapy. Well, guess what? You get arrested for domestic violence, you get arrested for road rage, you get arrested for fighting for somebody. One of the things the judge may sentence you to is an anger management school. And this is typically a group program. There's lots of them. There's a website run by a guy named George Anderson Anger Management. He's very well known, especially in California. If you look at George Anderson's website on anger management, they have all kinds of anger programs for people to go to. It's kind of like, some of it is for DV, is called Batterer School, which is sometimes a 52-week program. Some other anger programs could be court-ordered by a judge. They're 26-week programs, and you have to go to every single program, every single class meeting. It's a group discussion. And in those group discussions, they talk about the impact of anger and what it means and how you got here and what you're trying to do to come up with tools. And they use workbooks and exercises and things like that to get people straight on the concept of anger and how it can ruin their life. The other part of road rage is to realize that what you do behind the wheel of a car has consequences, and what you do behind the wheel of a car from a dangerous perspective has consequences. Do you want to end up in debt or in jail or in prison or put your kids or spouse or partner at risk because somebody cut you off, or because somebody didn't put on their turn signal, because somebody was looking at their phone and may have drifted over into your lane unintentionally? Think about how many road rage situations happen with unintentional behavior by the other driver that the person who has the anger issues behind the wheels just goes crazy. When you look at the impact of road rage, can you draw circles outside of it and say, this is impacting other people? It's affecting my kids who are afraid to drive with me. It's affecting my spouse who's afraid to drive with me. It's affecting other people, my colleagues that I have to drive as part of my job that don't want to drive with me. It's more than just cursing at some vehicle. It's creating an environment inside your car where people are afraid to ride with you. And is that the perception that you want? Is that the reality that you want? When you think about it, if you look at road rage as a larger picture of what's going on in your life, it can be that, because of unmanaged anger and temper problems and things like that, this is just a small part of the iceberg, which is your personality, how you react to stressful situations in an inappropriate way. And again, we're back to the solutions about get some help, get some therapy. One of the biggest things for anger management when you're actually behind the wheel is stress management. Let stuff go. Drink your cup of coffee. Enjoy what's on the radio. I have satellite radio. I like Sirius XM. They have a couple hundred channels of everything that you'd want, from music and talk and entertainment and sports. I listen to Sirius XM in my car because I can focus on something other than the world around me for that span of time that I'm in the car. That 15 minutes or that 5 hours that I'm in the car, I can focus on something else besides just driving and concentrating on being a safe driver and getting some entertainment as I go forward. Think about how you can use the radio. Excuse me. Think about how you can use the radio as a way to temper what's going on in your head or your heart about anger. Use it as a distraction. Focus on the road. And really that's another kind of big piece of anger management and also road rage management and road rage mastery and prevention is drive fully, drive carefully, drive with full concentration, drive with full defensive awareness of other cars around you. Lots of other things that are in the car can distract you. Your kids, your phone that's in your hand that should be on the seat next to you and not in your hand, texting, messing with your phone, looking at stuff, monkeying around with the navigation system in your car, monkeying around with the other controls in your car. Those things can distract you from full concentration on the road. It's easy to take your eyes off the road for just a second. When you think about how fast you're going, take your speed limit and multiply it by 1.5 and get your feet per second. So in a 60 mile an hour or 50 mile an hour situation, you're going 75 feet per second. So think how in the passage of 1 second, how far you've traveled up the road next to somebody, in front of somebody, behind somebody. So focus on your driving. Just drive, both eyes on the road, not on everything else. Focus on your speed, focus on your lane position, focus on where you are with regard to other cars. Don't tailgate. Focus on cars around you and their speed and where they're merging in and out. And prepare yourself to drive in a way that you need to get off the highway, that you're ready to do it, that you're ready to merge off the highway or merge onto the highway. Don't use road rage as an excuse for your poor driving habits or your poor driving skills. Think about how carefully you drove when you were 16. Hands at 10 and 2, fully paying attention, using your turn signals, braking carefully, all those things. Well, once you've learned how to drive mechanically, where most people are, where they don't pay attention to the operation of the car at all, how much pressure to put on the gas pedal and all that type of stuff, and the braking, that we get sort of mechanized and it's routine and we can become robotic. I read an article about a guy who won an award as the best limousine driver in all of New York City. That's a lot of limousine drivers. And they said, "What's your secret to safe driving?" And he said, "I drive. I don't mess with my phone. I don't mess with the radio. I don't, monkey around with anything else in the car. I drive carefully, safely. I drive." So, that guy really boiled it down to a nutshell, which is the best way to not become involved in road rage as a victim, and the best way not to become involved in road rage as a perpetrator is to drive carefully, drive defensively, drive safely. That seems pretty obvious, but not necessarily. So think about the things that happen when you're involved in a situation where someone drives aggressively towards you or tries to make eye contact. And so I always say, don't engage with a rager. This means no eye contact, no retaliatory finger flipping, don't lane change, swerve, don't block the other person from coming over, don't mutually tailgate, don't slam on your brakes, to quote Teach Him a Lesson. He plows into the back of your car, you could be named as fault. I like tinted windows. I tint the windows of my car on the sides and in the back so that I have kind of a sense of safety inside there. I don't want people driving up and seeing what I'm all about. I like tinted windows. Most road ragers seem to go after people that they can think that they can fight and win. So they look for easy targets. They look for people maybe smaller than them, driving smaller cars. Don't allow these people to target you. Be as anonymous as you can on the road. I guess the biggest factor for road rage safety that's so different now compared to the old days is the use of cell phones. Excuse me. Cell phones now serve as a record or as an indicator of what went on. And you can flip on your cell phone, and some cars even have, you've seen them, I've seen motorcycles with this as well, that have their own sort of GoPro camera type system mounted on the dashboard of the car. They can capture everything that's happening outside the window. So your use of your cell phone to dial 911 and your use of the cell phone to capture what this person is doing may be very useful as a defense of your actions and as a to help the cops prosecute and the district attorney prosecute these types of cases if it turns into a crime where somebody's injured or you're injured or there's some type of accident. So if you get into an accident with a road rager and you have lots of video prior to showing what this person's behavior was, your attorney and the district attorney or city attorney is going to want to see that footage. So think about when we call 911 on the highway, sometimes we forget that we're not in our local police jurisdiction, we're in the state police or the highway patrol's jurisdiction. So lots of times when you dial 911 on your cell phone, it rings at the state police dispatcher, not necessarily the local PD or the local sheriff in the community that you're in. That could be useful because you want to tell the dispatcher where you are, what lane you're in, what type of car you're driving, the license plate number, and all the information that you can get about this person who is creating the road rage situation. That would be a description of their car, color, make, model, license plate if you can get it for sure. Don't put yourself at risk to do it, but if you can see what it is, then get the license plate number. Describe the driver, what this person looks like, and which direction you're going. Think about how the state police and the police count lanes. If there's a 4-lane highway, then the first lane is the one that's closer to, and let's say you're going north, and let's say N1 is the first lane closest to the center divider, N2 is the one next to that, N3 is the one next to that, and then N4 would be the right-hand shoulder. So you could say I'm in the N2 lane and this person's in the N1 lane and this is what they're doing. Now, the problem, as we well know, with calling the state police about road rage situations is there's never a cop around when you need one. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And especially if you can create or you can get the license plate to them, they can maybe be able to create a case against this person if they get a number of witnesses and people who say this is the type of behavior. They'll start to investigate those, and I've seen the state police and the highway patrol actually go to these folks' house after they run the plate and say, you were seen driving aggressively in these situations where people have called in, and we're here to talk about what your driving habits are. And so that's something that may be able to happen as well. In a perfect world, the many things as you can about this person's car and about the driver. Don't do it in a way that puts you at risk and zoom up next to the person and take their picture. But whatever you can do in terms of video, whatever you can do in terms of photographs, whatever you can do in terms of an accurate description could save your life. Also make it easier for the police or the state police to investigate these cases and prosecute them. So there's sort of a strategy with road ragers, which is let them go ahead. And I'm most concerned about road rage situations when the perpetrator, the road rager, is behind me. Obviously, that we see issues around ramming and things like that where they're tailgating and they're putting you at risk with their behavior. Don't match them speed for speed trying to get away. So if they're driving 100, don't drive 100 to get off the freeway. Try to do as best as you can to safely pull off of the freeway. If they continue to follow you as you come off of the freeway or they're following you on the freeway, don't pull over. This is not one of those things where you get out and reason with this person. Do not pull over. Don't get out of your car. These are all just dangerous things to do. You may want to go to an occupied fire station. You may want to drive to a police or sheriff station or the state police barracks if you know where they are. If you can and you're terrified by this person's behavior, get on 911 and describe what's going on to the state police dispatchers while you stay in your car. The most dangerous thing that you can do is get out of the car on the highway. There's two dangers. One is obviously you don't want to get into a physical confrontation outside of your car with a road rager on the side of the highway. And the second is you could be hit, and this happens all the time, you could be hit by a passing car. We see cops get hit by passing cars. We see tow truck drivers get hit by passing cars. We see highway workers get hit by passing cars all the time. The safest place for you to be is in your car, but not on the side of the road. Sometimes we stick out into the shoulder lane. It causes a huge crash, and it's a big mess. Stay in your car. Don't get out of your car to confront people. If you can, get off the highway. But my biggest thing is just try to get these people to go around you, to go past you and move on with your life while they move on with theirs. They're going to get their just rewards down the road. Somebody's going to catch them in the state police or something like that. But don't get into situations where you get out of the car. Keep your windows rolled up. Even if your car is damaged, don't get out of the car. If there's a situation where your car is disabled because of the road rager, stay inside your car, call 911. Don't get outside your car to inspect the damage unless they're long gone at that point in time. So when you think about this subject, it is a sort of larger symptom in our society of a larger issue of anger, and we just see it so much, especially on social media. I mean, spend 15 minutes on Twitter, and you'll just see so much just uncontrolled anger in our population. And why is it any surprise to us that we see road rage as a byproduct of uncontrolled anger in our society? So let's talk about Crime Time's Stupidest Crook of the Week. It's one of my favorite parts of the show, Crime Time's Stupidest Crook of the Week, where I get to talk about some of our dumbest criminals who managed to get themselves arrested based on their monumental stupidity. Okay, Indian River County, Florida. Sheriff's deputies in Indian River County, Florida, arrested a man after he tried to break into the county jail by ramming his car into the front door of the jail and then trying to climb a fence to get inside. This is a dumb guy already, you can tell. 24-year-old suspect was arrested when he got tangled in the fence's razor wire. That must have hurt. He was taken into custody and treated for minor injuries. He told deputies he was, quote, high on the synthetic drug Flakka. You can get that at the liquor store, by the way. And just wanted to, quote, visit friends who were in the jail. Sheriff's Department officials estimated the damage from his car to the fence and the door to be at least $5,000. Even if he had tried to climb the fence, he would have had to scale another fence and get through a locked door at the building where his friends were housed inside the jail. He now faces charges of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, battery on a law enforcement officer, 3 counts of felony criminal mischief. He does sound like a mischief maker, does he not? Leaving the scene of a crash with property damage and driving under the influence. Being held without bond, which, ironically, said the news reporter who wrote the story, gives him plenty of time to reconnect with his old friends. Time for Crime Time's IQ test. Let's test your Crime Time IQ with this week's crime quiz question. Okay, here's the question. When was the first harbor police unit founded in America? Okay, the first harbor police unit was founded in 1861. The Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department established the Harbor Patrol as the first specialized police force on the water and has operated continually in D.C. since 1861. It started as a one-man operation and expanded in the 1880s to 14 officers under the command of Lieutenant J.R. Sutton, the first harbor master. He said, the harbor police are a terror to the wharf rats and river thieves who ply their vocation on our riverfront. They also patrol the wharves to promptly discover fires and thereby prevent disastrous conflagrations. So that was in 1880s that Lieutenant J.R. Sutton, the first harbor master of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department Harbor Patrol, had said. In D.C., today's Harbor Patrol consists of 19 well-equipped and highly trained officers and sergeants under the command of the harbor master. Their law enforcement mission remains the same. Their patrol duties have greatly expanded. One of their primary specialized duties is underwater search and recovery, underwater search and rescue. The Harbor Patrol Underwater Search and Rescue Team is 15 certified divers equipped with the latest dive technology, including underwater metal detectors, sonars, and underwater communication equipment that enables the divers to stay in constant contact with people on the surface. The Harbor Patrol officers are also certified in air, sea rescue, ice rescue, that's a lot of fun in D.C. in the wintertime, accident reconstruction, marine mechanics, and boating safety instruction. So 3 cheers for the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Harbor Patrol, founded in 1861. Crime Time's safety tip of the week. Speaking of boats, some of you will be putting your boats and motorhomes into winter storage fairly soon. If you have space on your property, many people store their watercraft, jet skis, ski boats, bass boats, pontoon boats, etc., or their fifth wheel trailers or their motorhomes on their own property. That's great. If they don't have space on their property, they often use storage yards. Now, here's the problem. Remember to remove all valuable items from your boats or your motorhomes before you store them. The locks, Let's think about motorhomes for a second. The locks that the manufacturers use on external storage compartments or on boats, internal storage lockers, are not really designed to keep thieves out. Think about the main locks on your motorhome, not that sturdy. Take away any of your personal items, tools, fishing and camping gear, barbecue stuff, and lock it in your garage. If you have a motorhome and a boat, it is worth the investment to have a locksmith change out the main door locks on your motorhomes or boats with locks that can't be picked or pried off. The ones the manufacturers put on there tend not to be all that great. So next week, we're going to be talking about an app that I have in development with a partner of mine. My partner and I have an app called Cop in Your Pocket. We will talk about the development of this app and what it means in terms of information that you can get that's about safety and what you need to tell the police in emergency situations. So we'll talk about that app. So thanks for listening to this episode of Crime Time. I encourage you to go to my website at crimetimeradio.com. Send me an email, any questions or topics you want me to cover on future shows. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's at Dr. Steve Albrecht. Follow me on Twitter at Dr. Steve Albrecht. I'm always happy to get new Twitter followers. So next week we'll be talking about this Cop in Your Pocket app for your phone. And I look forward to talking to you then. In our world, there are sheep and shepherds and wolves. Too many people are sheep and too few people are shepherds. There are a lot of wolves out there. There are not enough police officers or sheriff's deputies to protect us all. You need to be a shepherd. Take care of yourself and protect your family, your loved ones, your friends, and your coworkers. Pay attention. Be prepared to defend yourself with legal force if necessary. Be a good witness for the police if you see a crime. Stay safe and aware and alert. At home, at work, at school, and like we talked about today with road rage, and if you have an anger management issue, you know what to do. It's time to look at some therapy on the road. So thanks for listening to Crime Time, and thanks to Jim Whining and producer Matt and all the good folks at Acts Media Group. I'm Steve Albrecht, and thanks for listening to What I Know.